Hello and welcome to this week's myNewsWrap, news from the world of SAP, Microsoft, and the world in between. So let's see what came out this week on news. So very short section on the SAP side of the house. So I have one blog post that I would like to highlight, and that's around how to use Keycloak as an OpenID Connect provider, and how to implement an OpenID client within Kyma functions. So this blog post kind of guides you through how to set up the Keycloak thingies, and then how to consume that via Kyma function as a client, and how to expose the function with a consequent API rule in order to make it consumable from outside of the Kubernetes or Kyma cluster. So quite nice read if you are working in the area of let's say, OpenID Connect and want to see how things work out in conjunction with Kyma functions, then this blog post might be quite helpful. Now with that, I'm already through with the SAP side of the house, so not too much happened this week. So I switched to the Microsoft part, and there is one general announcement that I would like to bring to your attention. Because Panay, that you might know from a lot of presentations and updates around Surface, around Xbox, around Windows, got promoted to the senior leadership team. So that's really, really interesting. Because this is something that might give the all the things that come along with Windows and with Surface new traction and further traction, and might move forward the renewing of Windows, bringing, for example, this Android apps to Windows. So that's really, really cool to see. Happy to see that, but also happy to see a lot more presentations by Panos, because I personally really like his style of presenting stuff. Then, with that more general news, let's switch to the area of Azure Functions. There are some end of support messages that I would like to highlight. Of course, not for Azure Functions per se, but for runtimes that are supported or have been supported within Azure runtimes. So first of all, the support of Node.js 8 is ending at the end of February next year, 2022. So if you're using this, I think quite old stack, yes, of Node, be aware to switch to a newer version until end of February next year. So there is some time to do that. So anyway, the community support has ended quite some time ago, so you should have updated anyway. And the same is true for Python. Python 3.6. Here, the support is ending a bit later. It's the 30th of September 2022. But again, if you're using Python, switch to Python 3.8. The announcements that I have referenced within the show notes also contain additional or references to additional information if there are some steps to do after you've upgraded your app from one version to the other. Then, one update from the area of the Durable Functions Monitor. Konstantin brought out a new version, and with this new version, the Durable Functions Monitor is now seamlessly working with code spaces. And it also now supports the new storage provider for durable functions, namely Microsoft SQL, so MS SQL. I've referenced the tweets of Konstantin within the show notes. So there you can see two videos where the new functionality is presented in a more tangible way. So if you're using Durable Functions Monitor, take a look at that. I think that's really, really cool. Then picking up the new storage providers for durable functions, there is one paper that I would like to highlight, which is not brand new, but came to my mind this week due to some reasons. And this is really a scientific paper around serverless workflows with durable functions and with netherite. Now, don't get kind of on the wrong path due to the title. Of course, the focus is netherite, but this paper really gives you a great overview about the challenges that come along with making workflows and states available within the serverless area, and what other options are out there in the market, and what are the challenges that those offerings face, or what are also the shortcomings. So some things are even not doable with those things, in contrast to what you can do with durable functions. So that's really, from my perspective, a great paper. And if you want to dive deeper into that area, that's highly recommended. And then one blog post that I would like to highlight around the area of Azure Static Web Apps. We already had several blog posts about that here within my podcast. This one is now one about the publishing of Azure Static Web Apps with Bicep. That's nothing brand new, but with Azure DevOps. So most of the stuff that I think I have shown is focusing on GitHub, maybe also with Bicep. But now this combination is something that might also be worth a look at, especially if you are heavily using Azure DevOps and do not want to switch, for example, to GitHub. Then I think this blog post is definitely worth reading. So yeah, something that I think is valuable. Then from the serverless side to the container side, Kubernetes. There is one blog post that I would like to highlight around KEDA, so the event-driven autoscaler. This podcast is published on the Kubernetes podcast series, and it has as a guest Tom Kharkov, who is one of the main maintainers of KEDA. So if you're interested in that topic, then this podcast, I think, is highly valuable. Then one tweet that I've referenced, quite interesting. There was Nginx Sprint, so some friends around Nginx. And within that, there have been some predictions around the area of Kubernetes, especially where Kubernetes will evolve with respect to service meshes. Quite interesting 3 points. If you're working in the area of Kubernetes, if you have touch points with service meshes, if you're working with service meshes, I think those 3 points are interesting to read and interesting to reflect upon. Talking about the future or predictions around the Kubernetes area, there is now a new sandbox project that has been promoted within CNCF, and that's the WebAssembly-based WASM Cloud project. So this one leverages WebAssembly as kind of the next step after containers, or maybe a very well suited addition to containers. Quite interesting because, as I said, this is currently something that is treated as the next logical step after containers. So this WebAssembly thing. So yeah, interesting to see that was now promoted within the CNCF. Now, having said that, if you want or maybe want to use a WebAssembly and want to make use of Kubernetes as the cluster manager, you can already do that today with Crustlet. So in the show notes, I have also referenced the landing page to Crustlet, which allows you to run those WebAssembly workloads within your Kubernetes cluster. So if you want to dig into that space, this might be a second reference that's worth reading. Now, that's all from the container side. Let's switch to the DevOps area. First of all, or mainly GitHub stuff that I have on the plate this week. GitHub Actions got a new GitHub hosted runner, which is available on public beta, especially interesting for Windows users. So it's the Windows Server 2022 with Visual Studio 2022. in public beta, so it's not GA yet. Yeah, I think quite interesting tool set that is now available in addition to the other GitHub Actions that are out there. So if you need some Windows Server specific tools, this might be the action that you're looking for. Then another announcement, which was, from my perspective, the best one this week around GitHub Actions, and that's around the reduction of duplicating code with action composition. So you can now compose several actions, several steps, and use that as an atomic building block for other actions, pipelines that you use. So there is one very plain example around creating a Docker image and pushing that to the to Docker Hub. And this kind of atomic building block is then reused within another action. So that's really great because this will highly reduce the amount of copy and paste code and the maintenance that comes along with that. So that's really cool. Then another announcement from GitHub, which is unfortunately useful, and that's blocking of users on GitHub Mobile. That's available now. So if you have to interact with toxic persons, which unfortunately exist, you can now block them also from the GitHub Mobile experience. So no need to log into the desktop. And then one more positive announcement. GitHub CLI 2.0 is out. And with this new version, it's now possible to build your own GitHub CLI extensions. So up to now, you weren't really able to do that because the focus of GitHub CLI was not that. So they just wanted to do the right things first at GitHub, which makes sense. And now with 2.0, they open things up and you are now able to create extensions on top of the GitHub CLI. There are some examples provided within the blog post that I've referenced in the show notes. Some first ideas that are also available from GitHub. And yeah, really interesting to see what will come out of that, what the community will do with that. Then, yeah, some news that crossed my path and are kind of miscellaneous. One cool tweet that I stumbled across by Christos Matskas. He built a .NET app, and for the security, for securing the .NET app, he does not only use Azure AD, but he brought in an additional step making use of Azure Cognitive Services via voice, implementing voice enrollment and voice verification. So that's really cool from my perspective. That's really interesting, and gives authentication also or securing your app quite new flavor. And there is not only the tweet, but there is also the GitHub repo that's available. That's that I've referenced. It's just the code, so don't expect a README file or something like that. But it gives you an idea how easy it is with .NET 6 to do that. Then another blog post around the area of Azure Identity, so making use of the Azure SDK and letting that one do all the heavy lifting around authentication. There are two blog posts. I have referenced the second one within the show notes called Azure Identity 101 and Azure Identity 201 that show you how you can make use of Azure Identity within your apps, how to make use of this part of the Azure SDK. And within the second part of the blog post series also dives a bit deeper in how the mechanics are really working behind the scenes when you use the default Azure credential with the SDK. Then kind of finishing the purely Microsoft section of today's podcast, there's one very, very, very important announcement for users of Cosmos DB. So there is a security issue with Azure Cosmos DB called Chaos DB. And this one allows users to get your primary key due to privilege escalation. So there was a new feature introduced, I don't know when, which allows a very easy usage of Jupyter notebooks in conjunction with Cosmos DB. And this API, with several other points, opened up a new attack vector that could be used in order to fetch your primary keys. So if you're using Cosmos DB, read this blog post that I've referenced and make sure that you rotate your primary keys. There is a reference on how to do that within the blog post. And also, if you're not using this Jupyter API functionality, switch it off within your Cosmos DB. So quite important, please. If you're using Cosmos DB, it's a quite heavily used DB offering from Azure. Go ahead and check that out. Then let's go to the world in between SAP and Microsoft. Bringing two worlds together. And there are two things that I would like to highlight. First of all, Bartosz Jakowski has brought out or published a new episode, a new part of his blog post series around Azure Synapse and OData. So this is now really the last part, at least up to now, diving deeper into Delta extraction with SAP extractors as well as CDS views. So now the story is kind of complete. So you can now really go ahead and also make use of quite sophisticated mechanisms like data extraction. And then, of course, as every week, there is the SAP on Azure video podcast. This week with a more infrastructural topic around the Azure Monitor for SAP that gets presented within this session. Now, let's switch to the area of learning and upcoming events, conferences. From the learning side, I have one thing that I would like to highlight, and that's an episode that took place this week of the InnoQ Technology Lunch. That's a format that's brought forward by InnoQ, which is a consulting company for especially architecture consulting, a very good one, I would say. So there are a lot of prominent folks gathered there. And they have a completely open session, which takes place more or less regularly at lunchtime, at German lunchtime, which is called InnoQ Technology Lunch, where guys from InnoQ are presenting something. Really very, very broad range of topics. And this week, it was about microservices, transactions, and consistency. And the presenter was Eberhard Wolf, a well-known presenter in that area. And yeah, if you have not watched it, put it on your to-watch list in YouTube, because that was a really good one. And if you have not signed up to get news about the InnoQ Technology Lunch, I would also recommend to do so. It's always on Wednesdays from 12:15 to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So something really cool stuff that's going out there. And with that, what are conferences that come up? Well, there is first of all the Powerful DevsConf that comes up at the 14th of September. It's just half a day. And it's focusing on Fusion development. So bringing together low code and pro code. Of course, more biased with respect to the Power Platform. But that's something I think definitely worth watching. And then the two big conferences from SAP and Microsoft have been announced when they take place this at the end of this year. So first of all, it's the Microsoft Ignite. Save the date. It's coming on November the 2nd until November the 4th. This year, it's again a completely virtual remote conference. So you can watch all the sessions from home. And of course, it's free. And following up to the Ignite, there is the SAP TechEd, which is now scheduled from November the 16th to November the 18th. It's again a global event, virtual and free. And taking a look at the landing page, it seems that the format is now settled, and it's kind of it's basically the same as last year. So you have the experience channel, you have live sessions, you have on-demand sessions, and you have this format that SAP invented, which is SimuLive, which is pre-recorded sessions that are then presented at a scheduled time. Yeah, looking forward to both events. Let's see what's coming up there. And with that, I would like to finish today's session with developer productivity, kind of. I would like to highlight a blog post around 3 fun Linux tools that you can run on your WSL environment in Windows. Really cool. There is the weather app that you can call. If you have been following DJ Adams' Friday hacking sessions, I think he also presented that once, but of course on his MacBook, I guess. But you can also do that on WSL. And the other one that is quite interesting is Twitter. So you can have your Twitter feed on your command line, which gives you a very, very pure Twitter experience. And with that, that's all for today. So I hope I had some interesting news for you. And yeah, wish you a nice Saturday, nice weekend, successful next week, and hear you next Saturday. Until then, bye.